Listen!
Hello and welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat, IGN's Nintendo podcast this week, the week of July 30th. Today we'll be talking about the huge release gaps between Nintendo's best-selling games, the Nintendo Gigaleak, and a lot more. I'm your host, Casey DeFreitas, and this week I am joined by Brian Altano.
My FedEx guy is here too to join the show.
Oh, perfect. What's he delivering today?
Something I might be able to show on the show next week, actually.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I'm excited. Okay, we'll have to do that. Build it. Now I'm thinking of what it could be. No, spoilers. And I'm also joined today by Peer Schneider.
Hello.
And Zach Ryan.
Hello. I didn't see you there.
Of course you didn't. How many chapters did you get through your book while waiting for me to do
this? It's a heavy
intro?
book. My arms are tired. It's
mostly pictures, though, so
yeah, that's true too. I don't know how to read.
Did you get to the part where the skeleton is Link?
Yes.
What?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How can Link be a girl and a skeleton?
That's true. No, it's a question historians
I think girls also have skeletons, Brian. I know it's surprising.
Agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree. That's fine. We can agree to disagree all day. But you know what we can't agree on is that there's nothing coming out for the rest of the year from Nintendo, at least as far as we know.
Disagree on that too.
Agree to disagree. So last week we got a mini direct, but we still don't know anything that is coming from Nintendo specifically for the rest of this year. Peer went ahead and put together a really awesome list. You might have seen it if you follow his Twitter about games that we haven't seen in a while that might be coming. I say might. I mean, this is super speculative. We really don't know, but I thought it'd be interesting to go over this list of games to see how many years it's been since we've gotten a new installment of games. Probably doesn't say that we'll get the ones that's been the longest since we've seen, but maybe.
No, see, that's where I was trying to get at. I was trying to figure out, all right, is there a certain cadence? And I've done this in the past too, like looked at whether there's a certain cadence where Nintendo renews these games. There is, right? Nintendo, in order to keep their franchises going, they send life signs out, but that doesn't necessarily mean a new installment. It may mean a character inclusion in Smash, or like putting an F-Zero track in Nintendo Land, stuff like that. So I don't know how helpful it is to actually predict what is going to come out and what will come out, because at first I was like, all right, the games that sell the most are the games that Nintendo puts on a schedule to be renewed at least every 4 years. And then you go, well, hold on a second. Animal Crossing sold like 40 million or something, the series. And we had to wait 8 years since Animal Crossing New Leaf, right?
Right.
But they did have a mobile release. So, they kind of...
And Happy Home Designer. Everyone loved Happy Home Designer. I believe
there was also Happy Home Designer.
Yeah. I don't know if either of those count.
IGN sold in 2013.
They count in the way that they're both Animal Crossing products. I mean,
That's
they
true.
Definitely fall under the same umbrella.
So I don't know. Do you want to look... Do you want to talk about the ones that haven't been renewed in a long time, or
yes,
maybe our guesses? Like, I think everybody here has the list in front of them, but like our guesses, what we think will be revisited next.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just really quickly recap. In the last 5 years, we've gotten Paper Mario, Animal Crossing. We've gotten a Pokemon, like we always get new Pokemons, Yoshi, Luigi's Mansion, Fire Emblem. And some of these had big gaps. Like it had been kind of a couple of years since we had another Luigi's Mansion. It had been... There all been really short gaps between these games, like Mario and Zelda and Mario Party. Like they're not long gaps, but then the games that we haven't seen in the past 10 years, they always have really long gaps, it seems.
Yeah,
like Metroid.
Yeah, dude.
Well, there was a period there where there was a lot of Metroid happening, though. There was a brief period there with Prime 2, Prime 3, Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero Mission, the 3DS one. There was a lot of Metroid, I feel like, in a very short time frame, and then now it's just been forever since we've seen a Metroid.
A new one, right? We got Samus Returns, obviously. Returns. Right. So, we're looking at kind of, they are shortening the gap between games with remakes, and that's what happened with Link's Awakening, obviously, too, right? We got Link's Awakening to take the spot in between, the next Breath of the Wild and the last one. And certainly that happened with Metroid 2, with Samus Returns, and the other game that shall not be named.
This one at least, Federation Force. Sorry, this one at least is something that we know confirmed is in development. We know it's taking its sweet time and was basically rebooted. We got a logo reveal for it, which is more than you can say for a lot of the other speculation that's going to be on this list in a minute. But this week, there's a shot of people in the Nintendo World Store reacting to the Metroid Prime 4 logo. I was in the E3 War Room when this thing got revealed with a bunch of you. This was exciting. Years have passed since then, but still.
Yeah, I was going to say, but yeah.
I think it's very safe to say that Metroid obviously is coming back beyond Metroid Prime 4 too, right? Like the Samus Returns model, it's easy to apply that to some of the classics. Like, Zero Mission, these games were really, really good. And it's just that they're not being played anymore because they're on, bygone platforms that are not in active use anymore. And so Nintendo revisiting that or putting the same team on doing a Super Metroid 2D remake, to me feels like that's going to be, they're going to employ that same tactic like they did with Link's Awakening and Samus Returns.
I just wanted to mention that it seems like Samus Returns sales weren't that great though. And I don't think
Metroid sales have never been that great. I think that's part of the conversation that you got to have when you're talking about Metroid, is like, it's always been sort of like a B or even C tier Nintendo game, despite the fact that, Nintendo fans love Metroid. They've always sold like pretty middling.
Yeah, but I also think the DS and then the 3DS were very different audiences from Nintendo's consoles. And like Axiom Verge did great on Switch. And that's that's an indie game that is available on other platforms. And 8-bit like an 8-bit looking Metroid game, and it did really, really well. And so I do think that there is a little bit more of a core gamer audience that plays these Metroidvanias on the Switch. Otherwise, people wouldn't be making them. And so I actually think Samus Returns would fare really well on the Switch if they re-released it. But it also wasn't the best Metroid game, right? Let's be honest. It had some issues. And then, so if we keep going down the list, it's been 11 years since we've seen any life sign from the Excite Bike / Excite Truck or Bots franchise. So the Excite Racers are gone. I think that's generally a story. There are not that many racing game franchises that are active, especially on Nintendo platforms. Punch-Out hasn't been around for 11 years. I don't think either one of those are going to reappear magically before the end of the year or even next year. But then it's been 12 years since Advance Wars, and you know that I will not give up until we have Advance Wars return.
That one hurts.
Yeah. I feel like Punch-Out would be a really easy big win with the sort of lapsed gamer nostalgic crowd that's kind of re-entered through via the Switch. The Excite franchise is weird because that was basically a reboot of an ancient NES to then N64 franchise that launched with the Wii, predating Mario Kart. And so once Mario Kart came in, there was really no reason for them to divert their attention from that franchise because it just sold so incredibly well. I think it would be bizarre right now to fast track an Excite Bike or Excite Truck sequel. Also, those were so hinged on the sort of motion controls and like, doing those flip jumps and stuff like that.
I had a lot of fun with Excite Truck.
Yeah, me too. They actually all are good. I mean, Excite Bike 64 was great too. Different game, much more technical. But like, I think you're right. I think Punch-Out has an identity and it has a character in Smash. And so I do think that Punch-Out will come back in the future. Whereas like, I think Excite Bike, maybe they'll do another 2D little mini game on the eShop or something. But I don't think they're going to sink a lot of time into making a new one.
I think a Punch-Out with, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think a Punch-Out game with motion controls using the Joy-Con would actually be pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it's been, if I go faster, go ahead.
I was just going to say you could easily implement a lot of the stuff that's happening in ARMS with the motion controls into a Punch-Out game. And I think, obviously those are two different sort of like feels, but similar kind of concept.
They should have had a little Mac robot in Punch-Out, like a training robot.
No, Smash Brothers has recontextualized a lot of these things. Like, Metroid historically didn't sell super well. I think I think Samus Returns sold like 500,000, which is half as much as Other M did. And then, the Super Punch Out for Wii, I remember sold pretty well though. Like that was kicking around for a while. But all those characters, a bunch of those characters are in Smash Brothers now, and so I think that there's a way to get people back on board with that franchise pretty easily.
Yep.
Yeah, I completely agree.
It's been 13 years since Elite Beat Agents came out. The sequel came out in Japan. We didn't even get that one, right? It's been 16 years since F-Zero, which is a crime against humanity.
Does someone know exactly why that was trending last
F-Zero?
weekend? Yeah.
Yeah, Pear was talking about it.
Yeah, I was talking about it. No, it was
Pear goes on a Twitter rant about F-Zero, and this time it's stuck.
No, it was re-registering some domain.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I mean, you will see games trend when a domain lease gets renewed, or a new social account gets registered, or even if just a trademark gets renewed, which as a company you got to keep doing. Now, if you're familiar with the old with the old Marvel story, right? Like Marvel had sold off a bunch of its licenses to different companies, and in order for, say, Fox to retain, Fantastic Four, they had to release products. They had the movie license, so they had to put out products. And if it goes dormant, the license holder can reclaim the license. And the same thing happens with trademarks. If you don't use them, you may get rejected when you're trying to file a renewal. And we talked a little bit about this, I think, last episode too. And F-Zero, Nintendo can renew because it has characters in Smash. And so they don't really need to make a new game. And I think they have proven that in that we haven't seen one in 16 years, which is sad.
But I don't know. Yeah. Out of everything on this list, and then you also have Wave Race, Detective Club, and then Earthbound. It's been 26 years. And you'd think, as much as people talk about Earthbound and Mother 3, you think we would have gotten something by now.
Earthbound is especially confounding. Like, really, there's no excuse anymore. It's like whatever the internal issues were that Nintendo had with the series creator, and obviously they gave development to Mother 3, which began life as a game on 64DD. I recently reread my hands-on impressions from Nintendo Space World 1999.
I saw that Twitter thread where you were talking to that guy about that preview. I read that as well.
I went into our CMS and I fixed the video. We actually have the video footage of it too. Just fixed it so that you can watch it again. And it's like I think it was Brownie Brown, another developer, reused scenarios and designs from the original Mother 3 concept, which was on DD, and then moved to cartridge. And then it came out in Japan on the GBA. I have it. I have the amazing Game Boy Micro Mother 3 edition as well with it. There's just no excuse. Like, why that game doesn't just get localized to have a life sign in the US and make this available on the eShop for the Switch. It's just like, it doesn't make sense. It's mean.
If they were looking to bring Mother 3 to the States in a big way, they would use the toyetic look and the engine from Link's Awakening and do like an Earthbound game in that engine, because that art style so perfectly complements that engine, that series. That'd be really, really smart.
Yeah, especially some of the background or the backgrounds and sort of like environments in that game are like very sort of sculpey clay. That weird sort of sheen to them. I think that's a great idea. That would fit perfectly. But
sculpey
then
clay.
They would have
Who doesn't love a good sculpey clay?
You guys never used that before?
That's what the FedEx guy brought, I think.
Sculpey clay.
I've gotten really into sculpey clay during quarantine. Yes. You guys, you got to come look at this.
Yeah, all of those figures behind you it's crazy how they're all handmade. Yeah. You made all of them completely by yourself while in quarantine.
I was actually going to mail them into Nintendo Power and show them, but then I realized they haven't made that magazine in like 11 years. So I'm bummed out. But check out Nintendo Force. They're doing the same deal. I'm totally into that. It feels like it's one of those things where it's lapsed so long since a new entry in this franchise that it's almost like a Half-Life 4 type of situation, or Half-Life 3, where you're like, where do you go from here that makes everybody happy? It's been so long that I think you're just bound to let people down. But even just like a remaster is such a great way to like reintroduce new generations to that game. Like,
and there are so many people who are familiar with it now because of Lucas and Ness and Smash Bros.
Yeah,
so
right.
And it's
why not?
like, I mean, you don't just, you have characters, you have items from the game. It's like integral to Smash, and it is a known Nintendo franchise. And I do think it's going to come back, but that is, out of the entire list, that's the worst part of franchise care here, is in that they could have done more stuff with Mother 3. Whereas, like, you can see, like, maybe it's not the time for a new Excite Bike or a game like that, because those games just don't, that genre doesn't sell that well. Or 1080 snowboarding, right? Like, snowboarding games were on fire for a while, and then nobody bought them again. And that maybe they'll mothball that until extreme sports are coming back, or maybe they'll bring back a wave race or something. But Earthbound just doesn't make any sense.
We're having like a sort of bizarre renaissance of skateboarding games this year across multiple platforms, which I never would have expected. But and so like EA announced a new skate-shaped game, whatever that is. We got the new Tony Hawk, there's Skater XL, a bunch of other stuff. Skatebird, which is coming to Switch, which I'm really excited for. So maybe snowboarding's not far behind. I don't know.
Yeah, anyway. I don't think so. I do think, like, the other stuff on the list, the games that are more frequently renewed, I think those are the ones to look for Q4 this year. I think we will get announcements soon, and like, I would more look at a Super Mario series remake as kind of being a September type game to fill the gap. And then, the egregious one is the Donkey Kong franchise. That series sells so well, and we haven't heard a life sign in 6 years.
A new game,
a truly new game.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that Funky Kong mode in Tropical Freeze is a completely different experience.
Maybe
it's got a
not.
surfboard there.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got DKC as a re-release, right? So they are kind of like keeping the name and the franchise alive, but like Nintendo Dogs, it feels like those are the games that are waiting for a new installment.
The DKC franchise is fascinating because for years the Nintendo audience was pretty split, in that they were happy they existed, but they were also acknowledging the fact that those resources from Retro could have gone to a new Metroid Prime game. And now we have neither. So,
right.
Like, it's kind of a bummer.
It is. Yep. It is a bummer. It's a bummer that we don't know what else is coming, but hopefully us looking back on all of these games that we haven't seen in a really long time has got you thinking about what is to come. I think Pear is right on the money when he says we should be looking out for some sort of Mario remake. I mean, we had those rumors previously. It is the 35th anniversary of Mario this year. And I'm still holding out for Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 holiday season to try to compete with new consoles. But I know.
Yeah, I would love for that to be the case too.
Me too.
Every week that goes by without any kind of hint or news, the less and less likely I feel like it is.
Yeah. I'm going to push back and say I don't want that game to come in November, because like, I'm just looking at the release calendar. As a multi-platform owner, I'm inundated with open world games in the end of October. The sort of like September to November window is insane right now, and so
December just for you. I mean, Smash came out in December.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, like December. I think December 10th or 8th or something like that for Smash. Yeah. That would be perfect for Breath of the Wild too.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, you heard it's Nintendo.
I was going to say, I think the important thing is that as Nintendo fans, as Nintendo announces new Nintendo Directs, and they specifically state that none of these things will be in them, it is important for us to continue to assume that they will be. Because then otherwise we will be letting down ourselves, which is the most important part.
Oh my gosh.
You raise a great point, Brian.
I'm just going to, I know I've said this before, but maybe the best strategy is to have no expectations, because then you can never be let down by anything or anyone, including your beloved video game companies. And with that, let's talk about another thing. I don't have a segue for this. Anyway, I'm sure everyone knows that there were tons of Nintendo leaks released last Friday. An anonymous 4chan user uploaded a ton of files and shared the link to them. And it is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of files about everything from Nintendo's history. You have assets from both published and unreleased games, development timelines, presentations, and even private emails and chats between employees, which it's stealing. Like, this was all stolen. Mm-hmm. It is in an ethically not great area. Especially, I felt kind of grimy reading conversations between employees. Don't recommend. But as a Nintendo podcast and as Nintendo fans, we can't ignore some of the more interesting things that came out of this leak. So I wanted us to talk about some of the more interesting things that we found out from this leak, and then kind of talk about the ethical dilemmas that come with something like this.
Yeah, I will say real quick before we get into it that and I agree, we're all using the word leak for this, but that's an interesting term because that is a word that we use when a new video game that's about to get announced deliberately gets leaked, right? When somebody sees somebody else, going through a PDF of the new Assassin's Creed game on a plane, they take a picture of it or they write some notes down, which happens, twice a year.
I was going to say,
yeah, constantly. Constantly. That's called a leak, right? When a teamster at E3 is standing in front of the construction wall that has a picture of Mario Maker on it, he's like, I just built this wall, check it out. And it says Super Mario Maker, a new announced game or whatever. That's a leak. This is a lot different than that, because this was stuff that was by all respects and intents was never meant to be deliberately released in any form by Nintendo, and yet here we are pouring over it. So it's just I think it's just worth pointing that out, that this is a little different than the usual kind of situation we deal with in the games industry and movies and stuff like that too.
I think it's a really interesting juxtaposition, because as a Nintendo fan, as a lifelong Nintendo fan, it's amazing to see these lost worlds and these lost character designs and these things that could have been. But there is the idea of, like, as an artist, you work on something and you work on it and you toil and you tweak and you make sure that it's right before you put it out into the world. And all that stuff that gets left, on the cutting room floor, for instance, that's not meant to see the light of day. And this is an example where all of that stuff has been dredged up and, like, put it out into the public spotlight. So while it's cool to see alternate sprites and stuff, it is probably alarming for these employees and these artists and stuff that work so hard on this, to bring the best possible version forward, to see this stuff kind of come out. And I think, just to kind of frame this conversation, Mike Micah from Digital Eclipse, he tweeted out a couple of days ago, and I thought this was, like, pretty much nailed it. He says, real talk, this Nintendo leak is bad on so many levels. It hurts Nintendo, it hurts fans, and it turns the topic of preservation into a topic of security and tightening the grip on intellectual property, regardless of the historical or educational value to history. And I just thought that was, like, a pretty spot on assessment of what's happening with these particular leaks. So anyway, now let's talk about all the cool stuff that we saw.
Yeah, I can't. But on that note, I can't imagine if all of my deleted, trashed first draft articles were published. Mm-hmm. I mean, so much of that is just word dumps that I never would want anyone to ever look at. And that's kind of some of the content that we're looking at here, is things that people... For every song that I've written that I like, I've written 15 songs that are so terrible that I would die of embarrassment if they got out.
Right. I was actually going to bring
what you're saying.
I was going to bring that up, Zach, because, like, in the music world a lot, you see, like, there's, like, live demos, B-sides. And again, a lot of those are, like, back in the 90s, you would go to, like, Tower Records, they would sell import CDs of, like, bands that you were into, and they had, like, the Japanese paper strip on the side, and it'd be super cool because you'd get all this stuff that you'd never hear legally released in America. And some of that was, like, demos that bandmates leaked and stuff like that. And other stuff would be, like, live versions of songs they played. In the video game industry, we're used to data mining, which is, and you see this with Smash Brothers fans all the times, they'll rip a disc basically seconds after a game is out, or even before, and they'll pour through every single folder and every single detail, and they'll find little instances of words that mention a character that could be released in DLC down the line. And so, our brains start going crazy. What's this? What's that? This is even different than data mining, because this is not digging through the details in a released product where somebody accidentally left a secret or a surprise. Mm-hmm. This is like these were vaults that were broken into through basically a security bypass through the IQ, which was Nintendo's sort of Chinese disk or cartless Nintendo 64 plug and play system.
Right.
And through sort of a security flaw in that, they were able to get into like Nintendo servers and pull out gigs of information. Most of it pertaining to some of the most iconic and classic games that we've ever seen come from their studio. And
not only that, but like code, like lines and lines and lines, like full games worth of code. Like Dylan Cuthbert, who worked on Star Fox 2, was, tweeting it like, hey, this really sucks that this is happening. But also, like, I haven't seen this Star Fox code in 30 years. And looking at it now, I can see exactly where all these, like these ideas were being plugged in and stuff. And it's like really exciting to see that stuff again. But, it's just super weird.
That's the one positive in that. First of all, you can see that Nintendo cares about preservation and archives this stuff. So they didn't just throw all of this out. They obviously stored it somewhere, and they have, entire sprites and animation sequences and middleware and all of that stuff. Like some of these ideas stored somewhere. Now, the difficult thing is, like, let's say that they were really believing in preservation and they have somebody working on that archive. And maybe sometime when they create a book about their products, maybe they drag that stuff out and they show us stuff like the original artwork and unreleased information. We saw that with Hyrule Historia, right? Some of the sanctioned products. But it might also be the danger that only Dylan Cuthbert and like the handful of people who were at Argonaut back there understand what that one piece of software actually was and did. And no historian working at Nintendo would be able to do anything with that file. And so there is a little bit of positivity in that information being released. It would be nice if it obviously wasn't stolen and it was freely given. And then for people to kind of like dig in and kind of try to restore what's in there. Because that's the other thing you're seeing now is there's likely no version of Super Mario 64 where Luigi is a playable character who's running around, you can control it. But a person who is a demo programmer will take the assets that they find and then they plug it back into the game code and they make that character appear. So what you're seeing is not exactly what Nintendo had archived. You're seeing somebody, it's a little bit like Jurassic Park, right? They plug the frog DNA in. Yeah. And as we all know, that ends really well.
Well, and the difference here too is that, modders have been doing Frankenstein patchwork onto ancient Nintendo games for years like this now. But this is running off of official code. And so modders were able to get this leak has happened in waves, and it happened with Mario 64 initially a little while ago, and they were able to get.
We got a bunch of stuff from Pokemon earlier as well, which may have been part of this.
Yeah, and so people were able to get not an emulated version, but a natively running version of Super Mario 64 running on PC within seconds, which Nintendo obviously immediately hunted down. I'll say first off that like I'm a gigantic Mario 64 fan, and seeing elements of this game from ancient E3 betas and IGN 64 screenshots from 100,000 years ago in high definition, and also hearing So Long King Bowser like in the sort of uncompressed wave file for the first time ever, stuff like that is like it really geeks me out, and it makes me think that like if there exists something source material of that high quality, that when Nintendo does officially remaster this game, they have some really awesome stuff to work with. It's really cool to think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's been some Super Mario 64 like doctored up screenshots floating around, looking at like really high res texture packs and stuff that look amazing. That this, I totally see where you're coming from on that. Like it very well could be the reality that we're looking at for a Mario 64 remake or remaster.
Yeah, and this was stuff that was squashed down that couldn't fit on a cart. Gigantic wave files for songs from F-Zero and Mario 64 and stuff like that. There's also like we're seeing sort of like alternate versions of games that didn't necessarily exist. Like early leaks of Mario Kart have long been rumored to not really be a Mario Kart game at all, and we saw some sprite leaks that confirm that. There were, I don't know if you guys saw, there were sprites of these sort of generic like red, white, and blue helmeted squat little kind of chibi drivers in carts and actual hovercrafts, which is cool because we didn't see hovercrafts like basically dip into the Mario Kart franchise for a while, but it looks like they were kind of there from day one before it then became a Mario game.
Yeah, my favorite part of the leaks, besides like some of the test areas for Ocarina of Time and Mario that didn't make it into the final game, was the Super Donkey footage that we saw. So Super Donkey looks like a character Nintendo created and then threw away and never used, like almost like a prototype for a new Super Mario World or Yoshi's Island game. Like it's the texture and tile set looks very Yoshi's Island, and like I'm kind of like, it's good that they threw this character away. I don't like him at all. He looks a little bit like a budget Rayman to me, but like this two-legged character who navigates the world similar to Mario. This 2D side scroller. I'm happy that we got Yoshi's Island instead, if that's what it turned into.
I loved seeing all the alternate sprites. Like I loved seeing, weird long Yoshi and all the different Mario sprites. And like there's a Link sprite from a BS Zelda 2 game that was, potentially being made that was really, really cool. But I also really love like all the high res assets and art from the manuals. Just looking at like the detail on a lot of the stuff from Ocarina of Time, there's some like pretty surprising revelations when you get in there and look at that stuff. So like, yeah, that stuff was really, really cool to me.
Yeah, there's stuff from those high res assets that like Peer and I didn't notice at all. Like the Lens of Truth actually has a pair of lips. If you look closely enough, I never noticed that.
Yeah,
it has an eyeball.
Well, that I knew. It's
yeah.
I saw a theory around with that one where people were wondering if that's because the Great Fairy originally was supposed to give it to you, because it apparently is a very similar character model to the. There's a lot to unpack there.
I always thought it was a jewel on the hilt, but yeah, it turns out it's a pair of red lips.
Yeah,
the lips are the jewel of the face, as they say.
Can we just call Peer out for a little bit here, though, and say that in our NVC Slack channel, when we were talking about the Lens of Truth having lips, Peer said that he never put it together that was an eye. It was supposed to be an eye.
I didn't see that it was an eyeball.
That is insane to me, sir.
Well, who has an eyeball on a stick?
I mean, it is a lens. It sees things.
The whole game is full of nonsense magic.
Yeah. Also that.
But what did you like, Casey?
Who has boots that make you float?
Besides that, I did.
In my dreams, I have them.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me go check. I have a flute that changes the time.
All right, go ahead, Casey. This is not going anywhere.
It's okay. I really like seeing concept art. So we got to see kind of the evolution of what Yoshi could have been up into the point, and he had a lot of different design changes. And I really like the very first rendition. He's like a super skinny, tall raptor thing without a saddle.
Hated them.
He looks like the version that ended up in the live action movie almost. Like he's a
dinosaur,
like a little turkey raptor.
Yeah,
I think he's that skinny mushroom. The skinny mushroom from Mario Maker.
There was also there was a leaked character model of Yoshi in Mario 64 that looks different too. But those were weird because those character models are not fully built in the code. So the way people were able to extrapolate them, it's just like pieces of Yoshi blown out into smithereens that they then tethered back together to build a Yoshi.
It's like archaeology.
Yeah. It's digging up old dinosaur bones.
It is. It's exactly what that is.
He's got a thorn on the thumb, not on the nose.
I also wanted to mention that there was a presentation from IQ for an online Game Boy Advance / PC Pokemon game. And a lot of people are calling this a Pokemon MMO, but if you go through the slideshow, it wasn't an MMO. It was Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green with additional online features you could access by connecting your game to the internet via the PC. And it would also limit some things, like you could only have 30 Pokemon in your PC when you're offline at a time. So it would kind of force you to connect online to do things. But it wasn't an MMO like how you would think, but I still think it's interesting that they were discussing these online features that are now common in Pokemon games all the way back with the Game Boy Advance.
And I wanted to mention that they found the F word in the Star Fox code, which I thought was very funny. Yeah.
And
Star Fox or Link to the Past, or was it in both?
It was in Link to the Past, and then
I think it was in Star Fox 2 also. But
they had
there's the F word hidden in the code.
So Uniracers for Super Nintendo, when that first got sort of like leaked for ROMs, people found tons of curse words in that game, which is very odd. And so maybe that's been a Nintendo secret, because I don't think they can curse a lot at work, so they probably just put it all hide it all in the margins.
Yeah.
But before we move on, Zach, you have a quote here from the piece on Vice. If you could read that from us.
Yeah. So Patrick Klepek wrote a really great write-up about the, what the leaks mean to video game history and things like that. And he interviewed a lot of people that actually wanted to remain anonymous, which I totally understand. He spoke to one developer who said, most companies are terrible at preserving their games, and piracy and other means have salvaged or saved many games. Based on this breach, Nintendo is much better than most at archiving, but that's why invasive data theft of this magnitude, while an anomaly, shouldn't be encouraged. So I thought that was a good quote.
Yeah. So I do think that is an interesting thing to glean from all of this, is that, Nintendo is great at archiving these things, and they do still have a ton of things left over. And hopefully we can get a contextualized version of this sometime in the future. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's still so much more in this quote Gigaleak than we have gone over, but those are just some of our favorites. And I hope that our contextualization has helped you kind of understand the magnitude of all of this. And with that, I do want to go into looking at some yaps from our audience. So the week before last week, the last time we had a video NVC, I asked everyone to send us some video comments on IGN.com answering a question, and we wanted you to tell us about a story moment from a Nintendo game that made an impact on you. This was originally a question sent to us by Eric from Cleveland. He emailed us at nvc@ign.com. And he said, sometimes games have the opportunity to tell impactful stories even more effectively than books or movies. And I think this is due to their more drawn out nature. A game could take you 50 hours to complete, while a movie is only about 2. Does anyone on the panel have moments from gaming that hold a special place in their hearts in terms of the story impact? Is it made more meaningful when gameplay is involved, like in Super Mario Odyssey? And what are your thoughts on the different effect video game stories have on audiences as opposed to movies, books, TV shows, etc.? Eric included an example like, quote, the mind-blowing realization that players... This is a Mario Odyssey spoiler. Should I do this? Should I spoil Mario Odyssey?
Game's been out for 3 years. It's fine.
Okay.
Cover your ears if you fast forward.
Cover your ears while I'm covering my ears, and I'll uncover them when I'm done.
1 minute. Yeah.
The mind-blowing realization that players came to when they had to throw Cappy at Bowser and take over his body at the end of Super Mario Odyssey. All right.
That was amazing.
Which was like a Portal 2 moon moment, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Let's start off by checking out Jonathan's answer to this question.
Hey, NVC. So a memorable Nintendo story moment for me was probably Wind Waker. Going down into the ocean and discovering that in character that the legends were true, that everything was true, was magical in and of itself. But also as the player, finally connecting the stories between Ocarina of Time when I was younger to Wind Waker when I was a little older was such a great moment. As far as your bonus question, yes, storytelling in a video game is entirely different because you control the character versus watching a movie. Just take The Last of Us 2. I'm not going to say any spoilers, but controlling the character makes a huge difference for empathy.
Man, nailed it. Not only did he give the exact same answer I was going to give, but he looks like my brother. So
I thought you were punking us, man.
Yeah, no, I wanted to kind of, pad out the show a little bit, send in some videos with my alter ego. Thank you, John. No, the Last of Us 2, that was my exact answer for that, because I think that's where a game can transcend a movie in terms of storytelling, because it is sort of forcing you to control a scenario and push forward in a scenario that you may not necessarily want to or feel comfortable doing, whereas a movie happens without. You can fall asleep and beat a movie,
It's passive versus active participation. Right?
Yeah.
And I hear some people are have a negative reaction to that when a game forces you to make a decision you don't want to make. Like Mass Effect's ending was the same way. Shadow of the Colossus, where you're playing and you're doing things and you're like, I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't. If I want to progress, I have to do it. And The Last of Us obviously falls into that camp. But it creates this kind of moment where you're coming to terms with the character having to do that. It forces you to do what the character feels they have to do. And that has a real impact. I think it's fascinating too.
I wanted to bring up the Shadow of the Colossus as well for that exact reason. And the ending just, it causes so many different emotions, and you definitely wouldn't get that from a movie for the exact reason that you just said, because you did it. You caused this fate by playing this game, and it is your fault. And I wanted to bring the Majora's Mask up for that reason, because honestly, there were so many small moments in Majora's Mask that are heartbreaking, and they're not all things because of you, but at the end of the day, you can't save everyone in Majora's Mask. And that is an experience you don't get from a movie, because you are making those choices. And
that's keep going. Sorry.
Oh no, that's it. That's the end of my thought.
No, just to add on to that, I think the one challenge you have with Nintendo examples is that Nintendo, obviously is now more focused on storytelling, but for a long time really was more about the kind of tactile interactions and platforming and all of that. And story took kind of more of played a second fiddle. But if you look at the Zelda games, I think a lot of them have those moments, like the finding the forgotten Hyrule under the ocean waves. And like for me, the big moment in a Zelda game is actually one of my less favorite Zelda games is Skyward Sword, which often gets a bad rep, but it had the story moment. And like, if you don't want it spoiled, I'm going to do the ears thing too for like 10 seconds. But you get to this point, like there's this grandma character in the game, and you get to this point where it is revealed that is Impa, and that, this is in the future and this character is now old. That moment was so touching and so amazing, built into the middle of this game. It was so cool.
Mm-hmm. And
that too.
I also wanted to, we actually had a lot of yaps that were about Zelda specifically, because I think Zelda is one of Nintendo's stronger storytelling franchises. But we did get one answer that wasn't about a Zelda game, and this one was from Mike Staub about Super Mario RPG. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike. I'm from Long Island, New York, and my favorite gameplay moment of this ilk is when the Star Spirit possesses Geno in Super Mario RPG. I think it's one of the greatest scenes in the game, where the Star Spirit comes down from the Star Road and gives this little doll life, and he has to kind of figure out how to use his body. And I think it's endearing to who the character is, because he's supposed to be this heroic knight character. What's the manifestation of wishes? However, with the gameplay moment, that same game in Mario RPG has a great moment where you look at wishes on the Star Hill, and you get to see a wish that says, I wish I was a great plumber like my brother Mario. And that's lovely. That's everything that Nintendo is great at.
That's like one of the most eloquent, soft-spoken Long Islanders I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah, Mike's a good dude. He's
what a great guy.
Yeah, he's pretty active in the NVC community. I mean, we've interacted a lot on Twitter. Mike's a good guy.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
I love that answer too. That's really good.
Yeah, really. It's not something I would have thought of, and it just goes to show how games can touch so many different people so differently, and positively. It just causes emotions all over the place.
Mario RPG is still not in the SNES Online thing on Switch, right?
No, but it is on the SNES Classic.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true. So it is half a foot away from me, no matter how I slice it.
It's one HDMI cable switch away, Brian. Just
I saw this tweet going around the other day that was like, before you go buy something, if you're 35 years old, you probably already have two of them. Go look around and find it.
Yeah. Very good.
And Zach, before we move on, did you have a gaming moment that you wanted to point out as well?
Yeah, mine's also a Zelda moment, but I really love the end of Cass's quest in Breath of the Wild. There's a lot that goes into that quest, and when you finally get Cass's song, it really kind of recontextualizes and like repaints Zelda and Link's relationship and how that world is, kind of thought about. I just thought it was really cool, and it's a really easy thing to miss in Breath of the Wild unless you're doing like everything. But yeah, that game is just the gift that continues to keep on giving. So
thank you everyone so much for sending in your yaps. I super appreciate it. Let me know in the comments or on NVC podcast forums how you thought about this whole process from last week and the week before. I want to know if this is something you think we should keep doing. And with that, I do want to talk about some smaller news stories that won't take up as much time. But one of the first stories I want to talk about is Persona 5 Scramble has been confirmed for Western release, and I put up like the quote fingers because it wasn't like officially revealed, but in Koei Tecmo's latest financial report, Persona 5 Scramble, The Phantom Strikers is listed as a Western title and project. So no other additional information. We all are already assumed it was coming out here eventually. Still don't know when, but hey, we got an extra confirmation that they're still thinking about it.
That's right.
That's about it. And I also wanted to mention that Animal Crossing New Horizons backup services are now available. And I say now available, it's not available for us right now because we're recording this on the 29th, but for you, it's after the 30th, which means it is available. And the Island Backup Restoration Service was one that had been promised for a while and was of importance because before this, if you were to lose or break your Switch, your island would be gone with it. But now with this new service, Nintendo Switch Online members, and that's kind of like an asterisk, right? You have to have the online service to be able to use this, which is kind of, don't know how I feel about that. But you can enable a backup system that will automatically upload your island and user save data to the internet at certain times. And if you were to lose or break your Switch and this was enabled, Nintendo customer support would be able to get you back on your island as you last left it.
Hey, Brian.
Baby steps.
Maybe your old Breath of the Wild save is out there.
Aw.
That's sad.
Oh, man.
Just floating out there in the ether, you know?
But I'm...
It's...
Are you cry laughing?
No, he's very sad, yeah. But like, I'm glad the recovery exists now, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I can sleep easier.
Yeah, I was saying this on a show the other day, but that's Animal Crossing basically killed my Switch Lite. Like it made me never want to play it again because I loved my Switch Lite. I was playing it constantly. And then Animal Crossing made me decide which system I wanted to start it on. And I started it on my regular Switch so I could play it docked. And also because I'm not really traveling. And then I decided, I'm playing Animal Crossing here all the time. Might as well play all my games here all the time. And so I just, like, my Switch Lite's been in a drawer for like 4 months, just sitting there. It's kind of a bummer.
I don't necessarily like how tedious this process sounds. I mean, it sounds like you'd have to contact Nintendo customer support to get your island back. And I guess that would prevent cheating, I guess, but also can you, as often as someone's Switch is broken or stolen, I don't know. Pear, what do you think?
Something. It's
Something.
If you travel a lot with your Switch or you worry, this gives you peace of mind now, and you can at least get a more recent version of your island. And like for a game that is designed to be played a year at least to see everything new released every month, I think that's a good thing. So I'm glad they worked on this and they came up with a way to do this through customer service. Obviously, for it to be more turnkey, like restoring the data from a server or having the data live on a server like that would be a nicer solution, but I'd take it.
Yeah, it is better than nothing. And now you don't have to worry about losing your island forever in case something happens, as long as you have Nintendo Switch Online membership.
Yep.
So
I love that they listen to this. So I think that's a really positive.
Yeah, it's good.
I think for anyone who plays Animal Crossing, this is actually the best reason to get Nintendo Switch Online if you don't already have it. Honestly, I think it's worth it. And that was about all of the news that we had for this week. And we had a lot of conversations to talk about, and because of that, we're going to skip at the Out This Week section. But I do want to talk about games that we're playing. Zach, what games are you playing this week?
This week I got back into Paper Mario. I played a lot of Paper Mario for the preview that I did some time ago. And then I took a break because I went like real hard on Ghost of Tsushima over on the PlayStation. But now I'm back with Switch and back into Paper Mario. I've been playing Carry On, which I really like a lot. The locomotion in that is very cool. Brian, you're also playing that. Perry, you're also playing that, right?
Yeah.
I won't spend too much time because I figure we'll all probably talk about that. And then the other game that I'm playing, and I don't know if you guys have talked about this on the show much, but I'm playing Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2.
I totally skipped that one. That's really good to hear that somebody is playing it.
It's so awesome. It's such a great, in the same way that Shovel Knight is a perfect evolution of like Mega Man on the NES or DuckTales on the NES. Like this is such a perfect evolution of Castlevania. It even takes the stuff that the first Curse of the Moon did, like the character swapping and stuff like that. It improves on that. Really, really cool ideas, really interesting stuff happening in a very old school, difficult game. But like, it's a testament to me. Like Inti Creates, I think, is one of the best teams out there. I love the stuff that they make. And every time that they do something like this, it just, I'm completely taken aback at how talented and how creative that team is. I'm a big fan of their work. So those are my shouts for this week.
I'm buying it right now.
Man.
I totally forgot about that.
Power of suggestion. Yeah.
I I think Brian played the most of Carry On of us, so maybe he can do the more in-depth impressions. Sure. But I really love the way this game looks and feels, and the way that they designed the creature. You're in charge of this gross tentacle bloody mess of a creature, and you explore the area. Like there's some things that I don't love. The way that you interact with objects and you grab them and you throw them, it doesn't feel as intuitive as it should be. Like it's but it is a really cool feeling game, and the way you can like super speedily get through the levels. I almost wish it was a scrolling game rather than a screen-based game, because it just feels, the locomotion feels so good in that game.
Right.
It's sort of a Metroidvania. I mean, it doesn't. I guess you could say it is. It doesn't have.
It is.
Yeah, it doesn't have a ton of those elements, but it has just enough, I think, to qualify for that term. I'm with you in that, like, grabbing stuff is a little kind of finicky in this game, but the sort of player movement is amazing.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you just guess when you grab stuff. It's like, well, I think I
did I get it or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well. Especially when you're I mean, for reference, it's sort of like a reverse horror game where you play as the monster, and
it's like The Thing. Like it's the Thing, the game, except you play as the Thing, like,
which I love. Yeah, it's like one of my favorite horror movies of all time. So I was super excited for this one. The more you eat and sort of ingest, the larger your creature gets, and then sometimes it does get a little indiscernible as to what part of it you're specifically controlling. Like there's a couple parts where there's guys with guns and they're trying to kill you, and you're like, oh, I'll just hit up and hide up here. But like your entire, bulbous lower half just drapes down and flops, and they're just shooting at it. So that gets difficult. My number one issue in this game, now that I'm right at the end of it, and I just talked about this on Beyond yesterday, so sorry if I'm double dipping here, but it doesn't have a map. And that's like the cardinal sin for Metroidvania games, right? Like, it hasn't been since like Metroid 2 for the GBA that I've played a Metroidvania game like this that doesn't have a map in any capacity. So it's kind of a bummer, because I'm right at the very end of the game and I'm not sure exactly where I need to go. And so I'm just like, I'm going everywhere looking for this thing, and I'm backtracking like crazy. And there's no sort of like directive of like, here's your mission objective. It's all, sort of deliberately obtuse to kind of show the fact that you are playing as this monster. Like, it's not like he's not getting phone calls and stuff like that. And so
and there's no visual distinction between the areas. Like the game looks very similar, at least the parts that I've seen. Maybe later in the game it looks different. So it gets a
little more diverse later on, but
okay, good, because it's not like here's an ice world, here's a forest world. It's like it's labs, right?
Yeah, I'm so close to A, finishing it, and B, recommending it as like one of my favorite Metroidvania games of this generation. But the frustration of not having a map at this specific point in the game is really kicking in to the point where like I can't fully tell our audience like you would absolutely love this game, because I think that there's just like a little bit too much of that sort of like quality of life loss right there that they could have. Gotcha. I think could have been fixed. I think it like just a very simple like node beeping to where you need to go next or something if you need it in lieu of a map, something. But I love this game so much otherwise. Like, and that's what sucks, because like I'm so close to being like, this is easily one of my favorite games on Switch. It's so damn good. Just a couple little things holding it back from being perfect.
I mean, maybe you don't have a map because monsters don't use maps and they're trying to emulate you being dumber than a person.
That's true.
It's a stupid excuse, but I'm just...
Brian, I think she just said you're dumber than other people.
No!
I'm completely okay with that.
I'm trying to emulate by not giving you a map.
You monster. Hey, I'm playing Carry On. I'm playing Crisis, which
I started playing that too.
I had to buy it just to see what it looked like. It is a good looking game for Switch, right? Like it is and you know, it doesn't. You can't say it looks like the PC game running on beefy hardware. It doesn't. It looks somewhere in between the PC game and the the 360 PS3 versions, but it on the tiny screen running smoothly at 720p, it looks really good. And
it does.
Crysis is a pretty good game. It's not my favorite first-person shooter, so I was more interested because of the technical factor here and seeing this game run. But it's a game that has a lot of foliage, a lot of trees, a lot of water, a lot of moving parts and stealth and all of that. And it's definitely one of the better first-person shooter ports.
What kind of sucks, and if you download this game, just know this if you haven't played it in a while or if you've never played it before, the first 20 minutes of this game in the tutorial section are all at night. And so right off the bat, you won't really be able to tell what your Switch is pulling off graphically because it's just so dark. Also, this game is like severely lacking in accessibility options. Severely. Like they ported 75-inch television text down to the 5-inch screen on Switch. Whoa. And it's got the tiniest, I know, right? Yeah. It has the tiniest fonts I've ever seen in a video game, like straight up. It is like almost illegible. And also there are no, despite being like a remastered port and a Switch port or a Switch port of one of the sort of most benchmarked PC games of all time, there are no options in the settings to adjust any sort of like graphical capabilities or anything like that. Like it's basically just brightness. And that's kind of a bummer. I would have loved to be able to like kind of toy with stuff a little bit. This is a game that has historically been used to sort of test out new PC rigs. And there was so much fine tuning and tweaking that went into that. And that's gone here. That said, there's not really a ton of competent first person shooters on Switch. And like Per said, in handheld mode, this game is gorgeous. It's fun. It controls well. You just gotta get some of the garbage out of the way. But I'm really glad it's here either way. It's a bizarre anomaly, that it even exists.
It's and I will go back to and play it some more. But honestly, I am at this point with Paper Mario where I'm totally in love with that game, and so I kind of blocked out all the other games. I've moved on from I finished Tsushima and all the other great PlayStation games that are out, and like. Paper Mario is a joy. I'm really liking it. There, the issues that I've had from the beginning around the battle system and, the lack of kind of character progression and kind of earning upgrades is still there. And that is the game's one big flaw. But man, it is so funny. I'm in this desert area. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it like the dungeon here feels like something ripped out of Wind Waker. The sense of humor around what happened to the Toads and the boss and all of that is it's so good. I'm really digging it.
Yeah, I think you nailed exactly how I'm feeling about Paper Mario as well. I think as the actual game part of it is good. I think we gave it a 7. And then as a game, yes, exactly. But the writing, the art direction, the dungeon design, like there's stuff like you're saying, like they do feel like little mini Zelda dungeons. Like all that stuff is so good. I'm really digging it quite a bit.
The comedic timing is so good, and it's done. A lot of it is what the characters do rather than what is said. Like there's funny writing and lots of dad jokes whenever you rescue a Toad, which you will do a lot. But like it's like the stuff that happens in the background, like a shadow walking by, or the way your friend reacts to what's going around. So good.
The Toad stuff is like some of my favorite stuff, and I'll talk about one thing that really, really made me laugh super hard. This is a minor spoiler, but you get an item that buzzes the closer you get to Toads. So it's just constantly buzzing. You're constantly around a Toad. So they're everywhere in this game. And there was one area where I could not find this final Toad. I knew there was only one left in the area, but I couldn't find him anywhere. And there was binoculars, like the outdoor binoculars that you use, like a viewfinder when you want to see something in the distance. And you walk up to it and you have the option to look through it. And when you look through it, you see the little binocular view, but in the binocular view, it's just only the face of a toad, just the two little lines in the mouth. And I laughed so hard that I had to like set the controller down because it was so unbelievably funny. Because you just see this, like this. It's so good.
They are, without spoiling it, there are more moments like that where a toad is just stuck in a place where the environment gives away that they're there. And it's just, when you figure it out, you're like, oh my God, it's so good.
I keep hearing that the humor in Paper Mario Origami King is just amazing.
Great. It's really good. Yeah.
I think it's really hard for video games to be genuinely funny. And this game is like really, really funny.
Well, thanks everyone for sharing with me what you are playing. And we did technically already answer a question block question, but let's find the time for one more. This question block question from Harry Loizitis.
Harry Loizitis, my man.
Loizitis. Okay, cool. I got him mostly right.
Yeah.
They ask, what 6 Nintendo characters would be the Avengers of video games? And before we answer this question, so you know the original 6 Avengers are Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. And
well, Hawkeye's Link, right?
Right? Like, do we want to do one-to-ones, or do we just want to put it together, the 6 most iconic characters?
We're going with the movie Avengers, right? Because isn't the original... The other original Avengers is like a weird... There's like a...
Movie Avengers.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Because we're mainstream.
I would do one-to-one matches. Okay. In which case, Iron Man is Samus.
Yes.
Hulk is definitely Kirby. Or could be Donkey Kong.
Okay.
No, it's Kirby.
What?
Hulk is
Donkey Kong.
Hulk is Donkey Kong.
Okay,
sure.
Fine.
Yeah.
And then we
Thor is
said
Pikachu.
Thor is Pikachu.
And then Mario has got to be Cap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mario's Captain America.
Who are missing?
Black Widow.
Black Widow.
Diving deep into Nintendo's roster of strong female leads, we already blew Samus on Iron Man.
We can put... why don't we do...
There's Bayonetta, kind of borrowed, owned.
What about No, I think that makes sense. But do we want to do Bayonetta and then leave out Fox, Kirby, and Yoshi?
Well, Fox, Kirby, and Yoshi, none of those are... Maybe Fox is Black Widow.
What?
Because they're both foxes. That was terrible. I'm sorry.
Well, because you can always say Yoshi is Rocket if you expand the roster.
True. And if you play as Fox in Smash Brothers, he's doing a lot of like karate moves like Black Widow does. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
I think Bayonetta would make more sense, though.
You guys did Link dirty, by the way. It's not fair.
Yeah.
As Hawkeye?
By the way, I just want to let you guys know that Captain Falcon is Falcon.
Okay.
That makes sense. All right. There we did it. We did it. Your expanded Avengers as Nintendo characters. Please don't argue with us. We are the number one authority on this very specific matter. And that was NVC for the week of July 30th. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Remember, you can catch Nintendo Voice Chat every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific time on your favorite podcasting platform or IGN.com or YouTube.com. Everyone, thank you for joining me. And remember, Nintendo Voice Chat is the only place you can
get the thing.